Today's tale comes from Quora user Michelle Lee, who answered the question, "Have you ever seen a real monster?" Michelle could only give a second-hand account of an incident that took place in the early 1990s, involving a couple of her close friends while enjoying an evening in the wilderness of Western Canada. The two friends were with three others in an undisclosed location, given the author's desire for privacy. The group of 5 teenagers were enjoying what was described as a late-night picnic of hot dogs and marshmallows. Michelle was adamant that there were no drugs involved in the evening's events, but only very light drinking, with some guitar playing and singing. Just 5 ordinary teens making the most of what began as a fine summer night. After a while, one of Michelle's friends announced that she was going beyond some nearby bushes to, well, let's just say, powder her nose. She disappeared behind the foliage to take care of business, but in less than a minute she burst back into the clearing where her startled friends were shocked to see her stumbling over her pants, which were still at her ankles as she struggled through shock and hyperventilation to communicate, shaking and pointing wildly before finally blurting out, "Go, go, run! There's something in the bushes. I don't know what it is. Run!" Michelle's other friend, instead of responding to the girl's obvious terror, decided to go and investigate, while the other 3 remained where they were, nervously laughing at the situation. However, the panicked girl begged him not to go into the bushes, pleading, No, please don't go look," while somehow mustering up the courage to follow him, trembling. Suddenly, the world turned upside down as the 2 teens stumbled off a cliff. Perhaps too focused on the thing behind the trees, the 2 teens had failed to notice the very real danger of the height that almost claimed their lives. Fortunately, their plummet was thwarted by a jutting rock ledge which prevented them from dashing themselves upon the canyon and raging waters below, though not without paying for their lives with broken bones and multiple injuries. After a couple of hours, the 2 teens were rescued by search and rescue. They gave their statement to the authorities, so apparently this incident is on record somewhere other than on Quora. But what had happened in the bushes that night? Had it been a Sasquatch, a madman, a ghost? Apparently not. The 5 teenagers came away from that night with the story of a solid white, gelatinous mass, a smooth monster void of fur with a moist body that glistened in the moonlit night, almost transparent. A literal bogeyman, about 2 feet tall, with a round small head atop a wide thick body. It had no appendages to speak of, no obvious mouth, nose, or even ears, but upon what might have passed for a face were 2 distinct shiny black eyes. The thing lumbered along the ground slowly like some kind of unearthly slug before it was disturbed by the frightened youths, whereupon it turned to face them and moved quickly in their direction, which caused the 2 terrified teens to run blindly off the cliff. But when they reported it, they seemed to imply that they had been pushed off the cliff by some kind of invisible force. It would seem that what we have here is some kind of telepathic snot monster. The other 3 teens had heard yelling and screaming and ran into the bushes, where they too caught a glimpse of the thing before it slithered away into the woods. This being the 1990s, the 3 kids had to make a run for their car so they could drive to the nearest payphone and call for help. Although this event has all the hallmarks of a 1980s B-grade horror movie, all 5 individuals swore that it was real. Michelle seems to have wrestled with the validity of their claims. It is possible that the 5 individuals were making this whole thing up, and yet, if so, it was a prank that came at a high cost to at least 2 of them after falling off that cliff. Apparently, some of the authorities believed their story, while others laughed it off. Of course, there was no record of this in the media, so did it really happen? One of Michelle's 2 friends has unfortunately since passed away, but before he did, he said, "You know, what I saw in the valley that night really happened." But the other 4 never really talked about it much in the years that followed. Perhaps one of them will see this video and feel compelled to share their side of the story. But what do you make of this bizarre encounter? Was this a real thing, or were these teenagers frightened away by a trick of the moonlight, mixed with a couple of beers? I've never heard of a blobby cryptid myself, but what about you? Have you ever bumped into an angry black-eyed booger monster while alone in the woods? Have you ever seen a creature that was so out of this world that you couldn't even guess as to what it was? Please share your tale with me at tellyourtalehere@gmail.com so that I can tell your tale in a future video. And until next time, be careful where you choose to pee in the woods.